Welcome to the Environmental Transformation Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Grady, and today's guest is John Walsh. John is the Director of Hazmat Programs for the Short Line Safety Institute. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've last connected. It was a familiar face when I saw you when I came to the conference. I think the last we were engaged in doing work together was back in your days at CSX.
Yes. So almost a decade ago.
Yeah. So tell us what you've been doing lately.
After I retired from CSX, I moved on to Genesee and Wyoming for a couple of years in a security role as the security lead. And for the last almost 4 years exactly, I've been part of the Short Line Safety Institute as the Director of Hazmat Programs.
Okay.
So I handle all the hazmat training for first responders, short line and regional railroads, emergency response plans, drills, and exercises for my side of the house.
So how many, constituents do you support in the Short Line Association?
We're here to serve all short line and regional railroads, which the number varies from time to time, but a good number is about 600 Class 2 and Class 3 railroads.
Okay.
Not all of them are members of the Short Line Association. And they don't have to be members of the Short Line Association to avail themselves of any of our services. So, again, my side of the house focuses specifically on hazmat training, drills, exercises, response plans. The other side of our house, which was the original Short Line Safety Institute function, was to perform safety culture assessments on short line and regional railroads with the goal of improving and enhancing their safety culture.
So when we talk about safety training, what types of training are you providing and how many different types of courses, I guess, do you provide?
For our railroad clients or customers, we start with, we have a 1-day train the trainer class, 8-hour class. Again, it's all funded through grants from PHMSA under the HMIT grant program, Hazardous Materials Instructor Training.
Okay.
That's typically a 1-day training. Attendees, once they finish the class, we provide them with all of the training materials, slide decks, support materials, including sign-in sheets. We're basically giving them a turnkey training program to bring back to their railroads. Realizing that some of these railroads aren't large enough to maintain even a part-time training staff. We also provide direct to employee training. That's typically a 4-hour day. So we'll cover 4 required areas under regulation: general awareness, safety, security awareness, and function specific. And we've also added an OSHA EPA module, which is great for fixed facilities, shops, any other rail properties. From there, again, we're always trying to improve and expand our offerings. So the next natural progression was into, we call them, always have to have a name for it that sounds official, EPRREs, Emergency Preparedness Reporting and Response Exercises. So tabletop exercises.
Okay.
Where we could either do it with craft, which for those aren't in the railroad, the frontline employees, or just supervisors, or a combination. We provide a half day of training on responding to an incident and working under the incident command system, safety considerations at an incident. And then we build out exercise scenarios specific to their geographic footprint and the commodities they handle. And, like any other drill or exercise, we always preface it with that this isn't to show who the smartest person in the room is. This is to test the system, stress test it, and to get them, especially with the short line railroads, obviously don't have the personnel resources that the larger railroads do. So if nothing else, it gets them thinking about it. They all wear multiple hats usually in these smaller railroads. So it gives them an opportunity to think in a controlled setting, who is going to do what,
right,
if something happens.
Yeah, right.
Because that's, when time is of the essence, if you have 5 people sitting around a table and they're all looking at each other, well, who's going to do this? That they need to pre-identify their roles. Again, they may have several roles that one supervisor or manager is handling, but they should have that done in advance.
Yeah, right. I was just kind of I was going to follow up on that. Like, what are some of the unique challenges you face as a trainer providing safety training to the short rides?
It's I don't think it's different than any other training provider. Sometimes, and again, I mean, everything is no cost, funded through grants, and sometimes there just isn't the interest level. We've been fortunate, or the interest level in our training offerings has increased year after year, every year.
That's good.
But again, we're always looking for ways to be better. We took those emergency preparedness reporting and response exercises, and then the next progression for us was to help these railroads develop emergency response plans, which we call TERPs. So we'll build out a plan for them, build out a red tab section, identify sensitive receptors in the area, prepare a nice map for them that identifies all their critical assets in their rail yard. We encourage them to use it as a training tool to train their own people and to invite the local first responders into the railroad, share a copy of the plan with them, share the map with them, get them familiar. Again, the planning and preparation and relationships are just as important as the response, which I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir.
No, but it's a recurring theme that's been happening on the interviews, and you're right.
Invite them in, give them a copy of the map, let them laminate it, put it in their truck, have them drive around the yard, see where they can access, and we'll identify it on a map, but make sure that there are roadways, identify the roadways that are level, flat, and strong enough to hold heavy equipment and fire trucks. And then from there, our latest offer now is under the Alert Grant, which is also from PHMSA. It's the Assistance to Local Emergency Responders Training.
Okay.
So it's, we start with, again, the focus is safety, general safety on operating property, which a lot of folks outside of the railroad have never walked in a rail yard, walked on track, walked next to moving equipment. So obviously we want everybody that responds or visits to a rail facility to go home in the same shape they were in when they got there.
Right.
So we work through safety considerations on operating property, and we get a little deeper into safety considerations at the scene of a derailment, how the role the railroads play within the unified command system, and how the railroads could be a resource and an asset to the first responder community and the local community, and the need to make sure you partner with the community. So,
right. Well, that sounds like it's a big job. And we're here at the inaugural Rail Hazmat Thought Leadership Summit, and you were invited. Obviously, I was invited. We're all here kind of thinking through, like, what are the challenges we all face in this concern about the readiness of our emergency responders for rail incidences, right? And so what are some of the observations or takeaways that so far that you've seen as a result of your participation at the conference?
Well, it was a great event. It can never hurt to share best practices, and change is always good. Well, let me back up on that. Maybe not always good, but changing in an organization to adapt to new challenges and new concerns is good. One of my favorite quotes is Benjamin Franklin: "When you finish changing, you finished." And
you're always changing.
And as I referenced earlier, companies like BlackBerry and Kodak, they were resting on their laurels.
They were.
They didn't take the time to poke their head up over their fence and see what was going on around them. So This is an opportunity for all of us here to share best practices, share challenges, common challenges we have, share successes, and through the whole summit, a recurrent theme is consistency in material, consistency of training methods. So I think this is a great first step in all of us collaborating, and informally, regardless of when the next summit occurs. I've made a lot of contacts, we all have, with other nonprofits that the other training entities, International Association of Firefighters, International Association of Fire Chiefs, University of Findlay, Center for Rural Development,
PHMSA, DOT,
yeah.
right?
So
EPA.
It can't hurt,
right?
If everybody, and it's come up true. If we're going to say that the community matters, then we need to check our egos, and I hate using the word silos, but it still fits.
It does.
It's cliched, but leave our silos at the door, because if we're putting the community and the response community and the community as our first priority, then we need to collaborate and cooperate to make sure we're providing the best level of training to our constituents.
Well, I kind of felt like that the interest and the investment of everybody here is really, they're on the same page as it relates to, trying to do what's right, be the best responders they can be, support the community the best they can. I think they've listened to different perspectives from different stakeholders that were in the room. And for me, I was like, oh, I didn't think of that from their perspective. And I think that really kind of broke down some of that perception of those silos like we just mentioned. So now we're kind of more level playing field, realizing, okay, we need to do a better job of communicating because we're all really pulling in the right direction. We might have a little more percentage this way or that way, or, you're tag teaming this way, but we're all really trying to do the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, I mean, if this provided a great opportunity, especially with all the fire service people here, to get that perspective from them.
Yeah.
Because, no better place to get it than in person and over 2 days, both in coffee break conversations or over lunch or in breakout groups.
Right.
It's really, this was a eclectic group of people, but fit very well because they come from all these different disciplines, whether it's fire departments or emergency managers, elected officials, training providers,
emergency
FEMA.
management.
I mean, it's so it was, and it provided a great environment for people to freely exchange ideas and thoughts. I mean,
I agree.
Both in the plenary session and in the breakout sessions. I mean, I don't think I've ever been at something with this much participation,
and open dialogue,
where people were afraid to not challenge, where people weren't afraid to not necessarily challenge people, but to speak their mind.
Right. No, I totally agree.
If it's like any other service provider, if you're going along providing a service and don't solicit feedback, which we do when we train people, we give feedback surveys and we look at them and we tweak our programs based on the feedback we get. But to get a broader group of people providing feedback of what the end user is actually wants to see or wants to learn, it's just an opportunity to get better.
I totally agree. And I like the breakout sessions and the unique participation from the various parties, because it seemed like there were multiple stakeholders from different aspects. There wasn't like there wasn't like 2 or 3 class ones in one room. They were all separately, there was, emergency management in this one. And there was also, DOT in this one. And there was also PHMSA in this one. I mean, it was a great diverse group of within each of the breakouts, which brought in, I think, that whole diverse perspective. And it was beneficial. Like, I think one statistic I took away was 65% of the fire departments that are rural volunteer fire departments in this country. That was like,
I would have never guessed that.
Oh, I was shocked.
It's mind blowing.
Yeah. And the fact that, they're volunteers. Oh my gosh. Okay. So and they know they have a dwindling amount of resources, staff, retention's a challenge for them too. Training and keeping up with training with a rural firefighter. I mean, they already have a full-time job, and now you're asking them to do, a couple, 100+ hours of training annually to stay up on stuff. Probably. I mean, it's a daunting task, I think. I mean, when you think about it, and where's the funding coming from? That to me was like, whoa.
No. And that's why, again, in discussing or sharing best practices, from my organization's perspective, if it's a volunteer fire department, we're going out to train, we make sure we offer it on Friday night or weeknights or Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. So the volunteer firefighters can work their day job and not have to take off time from work to come to training.
Yeah.
And the other added benefit from, I mean, I've met people that I've dealt with in emails from other training organizations, University of Findlay. I'll use that as an example. We have a great partnership with them. We use their hands-on training equipment. They were kind enough to lease that to us. And, to help us all see we're not competing,
right?
We're all pushing in the same direction. So maybe as a result of this, we can all ensure and leverage each other to broaden our reach as best we can.
I liked your comment in our breakout session, because I was in your breakout session, that it was that comment of, hey, we're not in competition. Yeah, I mean, maybe our organizations do similar things, but in reality, we're working towards the same goal. And there's plenty of opportunities for everybody in this industry, right? There's no lack of that. And you're funded by, PHMSA. I know Findlay was funded by, they're funded by PHMSA. So it's like, you guys have your funding. Let's go train, right? There's no competition there, right?
Yeah, and let's not be on an island. Let's collaborate. And it doesn't mean we need to do everything as a set of twins or triplets, but let's share information. Let's share where we're doing training, so we're not crisscrossing each other's paths, again, with the goal of, depending on, as we heard between yesterday and today, an estimate between 900,000 and 1.3 million firefighters in the United States. It's a lot of people.
That's a lot.
And we have a lot of, we have groups doing this training, but that's a lot of people to cover. So we might as well work smartly and efficiently,
right,
and make sure we cover as much territory as we can.
So what's your take, John, when it comes to, leveraging digital technologies to deliver training? Are you a supporter of that? And, are you doing it now? Or, talk about that.
For certain things, yes. But I think for a lot of what we do, the benefit comes from face-to-face, using hands-on training tools. We have a training trailer with all the domes, valves, and fittings. Again, thanks to our partnership or relationship with University of Findlay. It's especially for the first responders. It's not getting them onto railroad property, if nothing else, to let them see it's a different environment.
Well, yeah.
And until you could sit at grade crossings all day waiting for a train to pass by, until you're on standing next to it, and you've been out there. And unless you're once you stand next to a locomotive or a tank car and see how big it really is,
they're massive.
And again, and it's not to scare people, but it's to make people aware and to help keep people safe.
Right.
This is big, moving equipment in a challenging environment, and we want you. If you get hurt within the first 5 minutes as a first responder responding to an incident on the railroad, you're no good to anybody.
Yeah. No, you're not.
And obviously, we don't want anybody getting hurt. We want everybody going home, whether it's railroaders, first responders, and everybody else going home in the same condition they left their house in that morning.
Yeah.
So let's, we like to start at the basic level of just general on operating property safety, and then start taking deeper dives. And you just can't convey that, I don't think. And we did during the lockdown. We did some remote training sessions, Zoom training sessions. We created some, we called them fast class videos. But the other reason I prefer the in-person is because, especially when we're training firefighters and railroaders together, is we're getting everybody together.
Yeah.
And that
putting that personal connection to the relationships that you need to develop when, in the event you do have an emergency, they know.
This is the general manager. Do you have his phone number? Well, give me a phone number.
Yeah, connect up, guys.
Because and it's, again, relationships. Consistency was a frequent theme, but relationships was the bigger theme.
Yeah, that was another one.
And that's why I think it goes. It makes it well worth it to go out and to do it in person, to get everybody together. A combination of the hands-on training equipment, the rail environment, to get them into an environment that they may actually have to respond to someday, and get them familiar with it, to get them familiar with their local railroad. If we've done a transportation emergency response plan for them, hey, have you given them a copy of your plan?
Yeah.
Hey, a good idea. Get us
Right.
a copy of your map.
That's right.
And then we always tell them, listen, we're going on to the next stop. So you
You're-
need to keep this relationship alive.
Yeah. Right. No,
The onus is on you to
it
keep
is.
it going. When we made the introduction, or we helped to make the introduction, you need to keep this alive.
And that's great. I mean, it's you're spot on there. I do think there are opportunities at certain levels of training that would be good for digital technologies or virtual type things. But you make a great point.
I could see down the line, and I think I'm trying to think. I don't know if it was the National Volunteer Firefighters Council. Maybe he had mentioned it, or Union Pacific, perhaps. But where they do kind of like a prereq, you take this module online, and then
we'll come out and do
the training. So that's something, again, as we strive to do better and provide better services. It's something that we could look into.
Yeah, no, I agree. What are some of the takeaways that you're going to go home and maybe implement or work towards improving maybe communication or whatever as a result of this conference?
Well, for starters, University of Findlay, I told them I'd share our job aids with them, or Hazmat Visor cards.
Okay.
I'd send them a hard copy file. They can use it if they want, and there's nothing proprietary about it. It's not copyrighted. If they can use it and people can get use out of it, have it. Speaking with IAFF, IAFC, I had lunch with them. It's one of those things where it's right in front of your face the whole time, the answer.
Yeah.
And you just don't see it because you get caught up in your own little bubble, in your own world.
Yeah.
So again, this is an opportunity to interact with the end users, with other service providers or training providers, and to start building those relationships. We talked about during yesterday's breakout and today about having whether it's a library, whatever you want to call it, a library or repository of training information where we could house all our training materials so we could all learn from each other and pick and choose. And, and I'm sure if you built an outline format of everybody's training and follows the same, you use the word blueprint a lot, the same blueprint, but a lot of smart people, a lot of experienced people here, and we can all learn from each other. And I know I'm beating that word to death, leverage, but we need to leverage each other.
We do.
There were 80 people today, so even if every one of us was a hazmat trainer, a million firefighters out there. It's a lot of railroad, and then you throw the railroad on top of it.
Yeah.
So we might as well work smarter, more efficiently, and share.
I would like to see some sort of an outcome of this conference where information is disseminated out to the wider masses of the affected, like firefighters and others, so they start to understand the concepts that we discussed here. You got the whole, fire association and the fire chief association, emergency management groups and things like that. I mean, it would be great if they were able to take advantage of listening because they couldn't be here, but they could listen to these podcasts. They could, get some, information out of, these things, but also if the follow-ups are implementation or strategies to expand impact on, communication, getting the right stakeholders together, better preparedness plans, whatever, right? That would be a great outcome and get it out to the wider masses.
Absolutely.
So,
and from the, whether it's a short line or a class one, meetings like this where the first responders are interacting with the hazmat folks from the railroads, where the railroads are headquartered doesn't matter because the railroad employees that you're dealing with, they're also part of the community.
Sure.
So, it's not some far off entity.
Right. There's somebody somewhat fairly local, right?
Because, the railroad employees in that yard, whether it's a short line or the class ones are on airlift and their employees in at night or every day. So they're embedded in the fabric of the community.
Yeah.
So they have a vested interest too. It's not some far away railroad headquarters. It's local people whose children go to the schools there, whose home is there, whose friends and family are there, and they have a vested interest in the well-being in that community too, and the safety.
Yeah, I agree.
Both sides of the equation, there shouldn't be any of this. Right. Everybody should have the same. The community is the focus.
Right. Yeah.
And everything else should fall into place after that if you don't lose focus of who you're there for.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think one observation was that there still are probably some stakeholders that weren't here that, I know maybe they were invited, they could make it, but there were probably a few others that just didn't make it or weren't thought of. But I think that'll be great to see them identified, whoever they are, to come. One stakeholder that I didn't really realize that was kind of a key to this whole thing, and I'm glad they were here, was the 911 dispatcher.
Yeah, that was interesting. That was a good call. Whoever thought to invite them. That was
That was a key takeaway. I was like, oh wow, okay, they are the first call,
yeah.
and they need to be on point with what the emergency
If
response
that
teams
first
need.
link in the chain breaks,
They are. So it was really good to hear that their perspective, that they're here and participating, and they had a seat at the table, and they were really excited about it. So I was excited about it. So that was kind of a great takeaway too. But well, John, hey, thanks for coming on the show,
no,
giving
thank you
your
for having me. It's been great
perspective.
being here.
And I'm sure we can continue our conversations, and love to get this out to the community and the hazmat managers and the short line. So make sure you share it with your friends, and look forward to
I certainly
connecting
will.
soon.
Thank you, Sean. It's
All
great
right.
seeing you again.
Yeah, you too.